The grand ballroom shimmered beneath crystal chandeliers as the city's wealthiest families gathered for the annual charity gala, but everything changed in a single heartbeat. Billionaire CEO Serafina Vale had attended hundreds of glamorous events since losing her beloved husband 6 years earlier, yet nothing had ever broken through the walls she had built around her heart. Then, across the crowded room, she noticed a rugged single father standing quietly beside the dessert table with his young daughter. Around his neck hung a silver pendant she recognized instantly. It was the necklace that had been buried with her husband after the tragic boating accident that had shattered her world. Her breath caught, her hands trembled, and the elegant silence inside her heart collapsed into confusion. How could a complete stranger be wearing the one thing that should have been resting forever beneath the earth? Before this unbelievable story continues, please take a moment to like this video, comment where you're watching from, share this story with someone who believes in kindness and second chances, and subscribe to Beyond Single Dad. Your support helps us bring more emotional stories that remind us hope can appear when we least expect it. The stranger's name was Callan Mercer, a hard-working construction foreman who had spent the last 7 years raising his 8-year-old daughter, Maris, after his wife passed away from a sudden illness. His clothes were simple compared to the expensive tuxedos surrounding him, and his invitation came only because the Charity Foundation had honored him for volunteering hundreds of hours helping build affordable homes for struggling families. Callan never cared about wealth or recognition. His greatest treasure had always been the little girl who held his hand with complete trust. That evening he only wanted Maris to enjoy a magical night filled with sparkling lights and beautiful music. He never imagined the necklace around his neck would become the center of an impossible mystery. Serafina slowly walked toward him, unable to look away from the familiar silver chain. Every tiny scratch on the pendant looked exactly as she remembered. Years earlier, she had given that necklace to her husband, Alistair, on their 5th wedding anniversary. Inside the pendant was a tiny compass engraved with the words, "Love always finds the way home." It had symbolized their promise that no matter how difficult life became, they would always find each other again. When Alistair's boat disappeared during a violent coastal storm, rescue teams searched for days before recovering what they believed were his remains. The necklace had supposedly been found with him before the funeral. Serafina herself had kissed it one last time before the closed casket was lowered into the ground. Seeing that same pendant now hanging around another man's neck made her question everything she thought she knew. She politely introduced herself, trying to hide the storm inside her heart, while Callan greeted her with humble respect, unaware of the emotional earthquake unfolding before him. As they spoke, Serafina's eyes never left the necklace. Finally, she gathered the courage to ask where he had found it. Callan looked surprised by the question but answered honestly. Nearly 9 years earlier, before becoming a father, he had been working with a volunteer emergency rescue team after a devastating hurricane struck a remote stretch of coastline. During the cleanup, he discovered an unconscious man tangled among broken wooden debris near the cliffs. The stranger had no identification except the silver necklace. Before paramedics arrived, the injured man suddenly regained consciousness for only a few moments. He removed the necklace, pressed it into Callan's hands, and whispered that if he did not survive, someone worthy should carry it because it had already fulfilled its purpose. Moments later another massive wave crashed against the rocks, separating everyone in the chaos. When emergency crews searched again, the injured stranger had vanished completely. For years Callan had searched newspapers, missing person reports, and online records hoping to identify the mysterious man. No one ever matched the description. Eventually he accepted that he might never know who had entrusted him with such a meaningful keepsake. Since then, the necklace had become a reminder to cherish every day with the people he loved. Serafina felt dizzy. The dates matched almost perfectly with the timeline surrounding her husband's disappearance. But official investigators had declared the accident closed years ago. Every legal document confirmed Alistair's death. The possibility that another injured survivor had existed had never once appeared in the investigation. Unable to ignore the growing questions, Serafina quietly hired a private investigator to reopen every forgotten detail surrounding the accident. Old weather reports, Coast Guard logs, medical records, and witness statements slowly revealed disturbing inconsistencies that had been overlooked during the confusion of the storm. One unnamed survivor had briefly been treated at a temporary emergency station before disappearing without identification. Records of that patient had mysteriously vanished after the disaster response ended. As the investigation deepened, another heartbreaking truth surfaced. The remains buried as Alastair's had never undergone modern DNA testing because the technology had not been widely available during the original investigation. Serafina requested permission to perform a new forensic examination. Weeks of anxious waiting followed. Every sunrise filled her with hope, while every sunset reminded her that reopening old wounds often created new ones. Meanwhile, Callan continued living his ordinary life. Every morning he packed Maris's lunch, walked her to school, worked long hours under the hot summer sun, and returned home exhausted but grateful. Although he barely knew Serafina, he sensed she carried a sadness far heavier than wealth could ever erase. Maris, with the innocent wisdom only children possess, encouraged her father to pray for the lonely lady who always looked as though she had forgotten how to smile. When the forensic report finally arrived, Serafina opened it with trembling hands. The DNA proved beyond all doubt that the body buried beneath Alastair's name belonged to someone else entirely. Her husband had never been in that grave. The revelation shocked the entire city. Newspapers rushed to cover the unbelievable mistake. Authorities reopened the decades-old investigation while searching international medical databases for unidentified patients suffering memory loss after maritime accidents. Months passed without success until an elderly physician from a small rehabilitation center overseas recognized Alastair's old photograph. A nameless patient had lived there for years after being rescued by fishermen hundreds of miles away. Severe brain trauma had erased nearly every memory of his previous life. He had eventually passed away peacefully several years later, never remembering who he truly was. The news crushed Serafina all over again, yet it also brought an unexpected sense of peace. Her husband had not abandoned her. He had fought to survive but had become trapped inside a mind that no longer remembered the woman who loved him. The necklace he had given away during those confused moments had become the only thread connecting his forgotten life to the people waiting for him. Instead of allowing grief to consume her once more, Serafina made a life-changing decision. Inspired by Callan's compassion and selfless dedication as a father, she invested millions of dollars into building community housing projects for struggling single parents. She insisted that every new center include childcare facilities, counseling services, job training, and emergency financial support. She named the foundation the Compass Home Initiative, honoring the words engraved inside the necklace that had unexpectedly guided her toward healing instead of despair. Callan never accepted personal rewards for helping uncover the truth. He simply continued raising Maris with the same humility that had defined his life from the beginning. Yet the friendship between the billionaire widow and the devoted single father became one of mutual respect. Neither tried to replace the people they had lost. Instead, they honored them by creating brighter futures for countless families who desperately needed hope. Years later, children played safely inside neighborhoods that would never have existed without that extraordinary chain of events. Every building carried a small silver compass engraved near its entrance, reminding visitors that love sometimes travels through impossible paths before finding its destination. If this story has touched your heart so far, please pause for just a second and leave a red heart in the comments. We'd love to know where you're watching from and what lesson this story gave you. Your support encourages us to keep sharing meaningful stories on Beyond Single Dad. Glowing star special request, comment below with one word that describes this story: hope, faith, love, or miracle. We'd truly love to read every single response. As Serafina stood one final time before the memorial overlooking the ocean where her husband's journey had begun, she no longer saw only loss. She saw courage, forgiveness, unexpected kindness, and the extraordinary way one simple act could change countless lives forever. The necklace had never been about wealth or ownership. It had always been about guiding broken hearts back toward compassion. And although some mysteries can never be fully explained, the greatest truth remained beautifully clear: when people choose kindness over bitterness, love never truly disappears. It simply finds another way home.